it was refreshing. And then everybody started talking about it, and we went back and looked at a couple more films, and then
The room fell silent. At 95, Clint Eastwood's voice, still steady but lined with decades of unspoken anger, cut through the air like a whip. He named them 6 names, 6 lives intertwined with his own, yet forever marked by rivalry, betrayal, and contempt. Behind the stoic exterior, behind the legendary squint and unyielding stare, was a man haunted not by fame or fortune, but by the shadows of deceit, envy, and fractured trust. Who were these people who had stirred the deepest resentment in a Hollywood icon? Why did their presence, their words, their choices leave scars that no box office triumph or Lifetime Achievement Award could heal? In this intimate journey, we peer into the corridors of Eastwood's mind, tracing the origins of these grudges, exploring the painful truths hidden beneath silver screen glitz, and questioning whether admiration and animosity can ever truly coexist in a world built on illusions. The answer lies in the stories we are about to unravel, each darker and more revealing than the last. The camera pans slowly over the dusty plains of the 1950s Western backlot, the sun low in the sky, casting long, jagged shadows over weathered wooden facades. The air is thick with the smell of sawdust and old leather, punctuated by the faint metallic tang of gunpowder from a recently fired blank. Amid this orchestrated chaos, a young Clint Eastwood stands slightly apart, arms folded, eyes scanning the set with the intensity of a man who observes everything yet speaks little. His posture is deceptively calm, but beneath it, a silent storm churns. He watches the other actors, the ones who laugh a fraction too loudly at their own lines, who elbow their way to center stage, whose eyes glint with ambition that disregards loyalty. A co-star smirks at a director's comment, subtly undermining Clint's authority in a scene. No one notices or pretends not to, but Clint notices. Every whispered insult, every stage compliment meant to manipulate, is cataloged, stored, a ledger etched not in paper but in memory and instinct. His brow tightens. The young actor's face is a mask of neutrality, yet internally, a furnace of resentment begins to glow. He is learning quietly the rules of survival, who to trust, who to avoid, who will wear a mask of charm only to stab in the shadows. In the small, dimly lit trailer that doubles as his dressing room, he touches the worn leather of his jacket, a tangible reminder of every minor humiliation endured. The air is heavy, almost suffocating, the hum of nearby generators mingling with the distant clatter of horseshoes on wood. Clint's mind drifts to the early television sets where he had first sensed the duplicity of the industry. Colleagues who smiled in the light, but schemed in the dark. The memory ignites a quiet fury. Each slight, each small injustice is not forgotten. Each seed of arrogance he has encountered becomes a blueprint for the grudges he will harbor in years to come. The camera shifts to a wide shot of crowded set, actors lining up for a group scene, the director shouting instructions, lights blindingly harsh, shadows stretching long and distorted. Clint stands apart again, his gaze sweeping over the flurry of movement, calculating, internalizing. He is learning the unspoken hierarchies, the subtleties of manipulation, the mercilessness of ambition. Each interaction is a lesson, each slight a building block of judgment, forming the undercurrent of the man he will become. The world sees Clint as the unflinching hero, but the silent ledger in his mind is growing heavier with each passing day. A subtle wind rustles the fringe of a nearby curtain. Clint's eyes narrow. The director calls action, the camera's roll, lights blaze. Yet Clint's thoughts are elsewhere, tracing patterns of betrayal he has yet to confront, memorizing faces he will never forgive. The scene ends, applause echoes, but the silence between shots carries a different weight. It is here, in this space of quiet observation, that the first embers of hatred take root. And as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the set in blood-red hues, the narrative lingers on Clint's expression stoic, calculating, unreadable while the viewer is left to wonder. How many of these shadows will haunt him for decades? How many faces will remain etched in memory, fueling grudges that even time cannot erase? The answers lie just beyond the lens, in the silent judgments that will shape a legend. The young actor, unnoticed, files away the first names, the first betrayals, the first seeds of disdain. Each small slight is a silent promise, Someday, all debts will be remembered. The camera drifts slowly through a modest home in Oakland, California, the walls lined with fading photographs and peeling wallpaper, the sunlight dimmed through dust-speckled windows. A young Clint Eastwood moves quietly across the wooden floorboards, barefoot, his small frame tense with both curiosity and caution. His father's voice echoes from another room, sharp and fleeting, a discipline heavy with expectation, a love delivered in fragments. In these early years, the seeds of resilience and resentment take root. Every harsh word, every withheld approval, is a subtle incision, a silent shaping of a psyche that will later navigate the ruthless corridors of Hollywood. Clint's mother is distant, often absorbed in her own struggles, leaving him to learn self-reliance before the boy is ready. The camera lingers on his hands, small and restless, tracing the edges of furniture as if to map the world by touch, as if memorizing the rules of survival in an environment that alternates unpredictably between warmth and neglect. Early experiences with peers, friends who mock him, mentors who overlook him, classmates who envy any small success, etch patterns of vigilance. He begins to understand that human kindness is conditional, and admiration can quickly sour into jealousy. Each slight, each unspoken betrayal, becomes a blueprint for the grudges that will follow him into adulthood. The scene shifts to a dimly lit school auditorium, echoes of clapping filling the stale air. Clint performs a minor role in a school play, his lines precise, his posture perfect. Behind the applause, however, whispers of envy circulate. A classmate mutters under their breath, the words barely audible but searing to the young actor's awareness. Even at 9 or 10, Clint senses the duality of human nature. The applause that masks resentment, the smiles that conceal contempt. These small wounds, imperceptible to the casual observer, accumulate, forging a quiet but unyielding inner strength, tempered now with the first traces of mistrust and simmering judgment. Back in the sparsely furnished kitchen, Clint sits alone, pencil in hand, sketching scenes of heroes confronting villains, of justice prevailing against deceit. The narrative lingers on the contrast between innocence and the first understanding of human duplicity. Each drawing, each imagined story, becomes a meditation on fairness, integrity, and the first glimmers of moral codex that will guide him. Yet within these formative experiences is a paradox. A boy learning empathy, yet already cataloging the faces that will one day represent betrayal, arrogance, and rivalry in the adult world of Hollywood. As the sun dips low, shadows stretching across the worn floorboards, Clint's eyes fix on an empty chair, a figure absent yet always present in memory, the echo of a parent's harsh word, a friend's subtle cruelty. The camera lingers, capturing the boy's quiet determination, the brewing sense of judgment that will one day harden into lifelong grudges. It is here, in the crucible of childhood, that the blueprint for resentment is forged. The boy clenches his fists, not in anger but in silent promise. Every slight remembered, every injustice cataloged. The grudges that will define a legend are already taking shape. The camera glides over the bustling streets of 1960s Hollywood, neon signs flickering in the twilight. Studio lots alive with the distant rumble of trucks, the clipped footsteps of assistants, and the faint clatter of horse hooves on stage sets. Clint Eastwood, now a rising star, moves through this world with quiet intensity, his gaze sharp, calculating, and ever observant. To the public, he is the embodiment of stoicism, the gunfighter who lets action speak louder than words. Yet behind this facade lies a growing tension, a psychological tightrope between admiration and animosity, between public acclaim and private isolation. On the set of a high-profile Western, Eastwood's presence commands attention, yet the energy around him is brittle, fragile, taut with unspoken rivalry. Fellow actors, once friendly or indifferent, now measure their every word and gesture, some with veiled contempt, others with subtle challenges. He notices the way one actor's eyes linger too long on the director, the way another's smile carries the faint curl of superiority. Every movement is a potential threat, every compliment a possible betrayal. The young star learns, painfully, that fame amplifies envy, and that trust is a currency far too costly to spend lightly. In the quiet of his trailer, late at night, the hum of air conditioning masking the distant sounds of the city, Clint reflects on these dynamics. He runs scenarios through his mind. Who could be counted on? who is likely to exploit, who will undermine him at the first opportunity. The narrative peels back layers of internal conflict, pride warring with loneliness, ambition shadowed by suspicion, the thrill of recognition dampened by the fear of betrayal. He is surrounded by people, yet increasingly alone, each conversation measured, each handshake weighed against a ledger only he keeps. At a glamorous award ceremony, flashbulbs explode, cameras click, and fans cheer, but the applause feels hollow. He senses the silent barbs hidden beneath smiles, the thinly veiled resentment of those who covet his success or dismiss his talent. Eastwood's stoicism masks the psychological toll, the pressure of maintaining a persona of effortless control, the constant awareness of scrutiny, the tension of navigating a world where admiration and enmity coexist uneasily. Shadows lengthen the grand hall, the glitter of chandeliers failing to illuminate the subtle fractures of human ego. Later, alone in a dim corridor behind the set, he hears snippets of conversation, laughter that feels pointed, a colleague's critique meant to unsettle. Each interaction, no matter how small, reinforces his understanding. The industry is not a playground for camaraderie. It is a crucible for judgment, a place where grudges are born silently, where every slight can fester into lifelong resentment. Clint's mind, always cataloging, notes faces, voices, intention, and alliances, storing them for years to come. As the lights dim on another bustling studio lot, Clint stands at the edge of the set, surveying the scene with a steely, unreadable gaze. Each new betrayal, each calculated slight, is etched deeper into memory. He knows that soon these simmering resentments will demand reckoning, and the 6 names that will haunt his life most are already beginning to emerge from his shadows. The camera moves through a dimly lit Hollywood soundstage, its vast emptiness echoing with distant footsteps and the hollow hum of stage lights. Clint Eastwood, now a seasoned icon, walks slowly, each step measured, his eyes scanning the faces around him with the precision of a man who has cataloged every slight, every whisper, every betrayal over decades. The weight of his grudges is palpable, each name a flame that refuses to be extinguished. It begins with the first figure, an actor whose arrogance once cloaked petty manipulations in charm. On an early film set, a minor misstep, a fleeting smirk, ignited a fury in Eastwood that would simmer for decades. The camera lingers on the subtle details. The curl of a lip, the glint of a watch as if flaunting status, the quiet ripple of whispers as crew members glance knowingly. Clint's reaction is invisible to the world, but the psychological impact is profound. Every action, every word, is stored in memory like a ledger that will never forget. The second name emerges, tied to an incident at an award ceremony where admiration and envy collided violently in hushed conversations. Eastwood remembers the laughter that cut too sharply, the compliments that felt more like knives, the casual arrogance of someone intoxicated with proximity to fame. The scene recreates the tension. Camera flashes strobe across faces frozen in polite smiles, yet the air is thick with unspoken disdain. Clint stands apart, observing, cataloging, and quietly burning the memory into his consciousness. As the narrative unfolds, the third and fourth names surface through moments of betrayal on collaborative projects. Directors who favored others over him, co-stars who sabotaged rehearsals, colleagues whose ambition masked a cruel streak, all are rendered in painstaking detail. Shadows of backlit offices, late-night sets, and echoing corridors provide an atmospheric backdrop. The audience sees a slow building of psychological pressure. Eastwood's admiration for talent is tempered by an unrelenting awareness of duplicity, and his anger is both personal and reflective of systemic cruelty in Hollywood's ecosystem. By the 5th and 6th names, the intensity crescendos. One colleague, whose public persona radiated charm and integrity, concealed a duplicity so sharp that it seared Eastwood's sense of justice. Another, whose influence and power could make or break careers, wielded it with arrogance and disdain, leaving scars that were both professional and profoundly personal. The narration delves into Eastwood's internal calculus, the intersection of talent, threat, and moral failing, and the silent judgments he rendered in private that no one else could perceive. Each revelation is intercut with cinematic reenactments, long shadows, flickering lights, tense silences in empty halls, the soft shuffle of footsteps, the whisper of voices just out of frame. The psychological tension is almost tangible. The audience feels the weight of decades, the intensity of grudges, the meticulous way in which Eastwood cataloged each slight and betrayal. As the chapter closes, the camera lingers on Eastwood's face, stoic, controlled, yet simmering with the intensity of unspoken anger. The 6 names have been etched into memory, yet the true reckoning is not complete. What will come of these grudges? How will decades of hatred, carefully nurtured and fiercely guarded, shape the final act of life lived under relentless scrutiny and quiet fury?